The smoke hung thick in the Red Queen saloon the night Helena Monroe realized she would never be free, and the words from Edgar Dalton's lips felt like a death sentence wrapped in velvet threats. She stood in his cramped office behind the main hall, her hands trembling despite her best efforts to appear calm. The brothel owner sat behind his mahogany desk, a cigar between his yellowed teeth, his eyes cold as winter stones. It was October of 1878 in Jamestown, California, and the gold rush had long since faded, leaving behind men desperate for comfort and women trapped in contracts they could never escape. 5 more years, Helena, Edgar said, tapping ash into a crystal tray. That's what you owe me. I fed you, clothed you, gave you a roof over your head when you had nothing. Your debt has grown, not shrunk. But I've been here 3 years already, Helena protested, her voice catching. You said it would be 3 years to pay off what my father owed you before he died. 3 years, Edgar. That was the agreement. His laugh was bitter and sharp. Agreements change when a girl lives as well as you do. Those dresses don't pay for themselves. The food, the room, the protection from the rough types who would treat you far worse than my establishment does. You think that comes free? Helena felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She was 22 years old, and she had spent the last 3 years in this place, serving drinks, entertaining men, and slowly dying inside. Her father had been a gambler, a drunk, and when he died, Edgar had appeared at her door with a contract bearing her father's signature, promising his daughter's labor to pay his debts. She had been 19, terrified and alone. I've earned more than enough, she whispered. I've brought you money every single night. And you've cost me plenty too, Edgar replied, standing up. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with graying hair and a face that might have been handsome once. Now it just looked cruel. 5 more years, Helena. That's final. Unless you can come up with $2,000 by tomorrow night, you belong to me until 1883. $2,000. It might as well have been 2 million. Helena's heart sank into her stomach, and she felt the walls of the small office closing in around her. She turned and fled before Edgar could see her cry, pushing past the beaded curtain and into the main hall where piano music competed with raucous laughter. The Red Queen was busy tonight. Miners, ranch hands, and drifters filled the tables, drinking whiskey and playing cards. The other girls moved between them like colorful butterflies, their painted smiles hiding the same desperation Helena felt. She made her way to the bar, where Samuel, the bartender, gave her a sympathetic look. Heard some of that, Samuel said quietly, sliding her a glass of water. Edgar's a bastard. 5 more years, Helena said, her voice hollow. I'll be 27 years old before I'm free, if he doesn't just add more time then too. Samuel started to respond, but a commotion at one of the corner tables drew their attention. A card game had turned heated, and 2 men were standing, their chairs knocked back. Helena recognized one of them, a local ranch hand named Pete who got mean when he drank. The other man she had never seen before. He was tall, lean, with dark hair that brushed his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore dusty trail clothes, and a gun belt sat low on his hips. Despite the tension, his expression remained calm, almost bored. I said you were cheating, Pete snarled, his hand hovering near his revolver. And I said you were drunk and seeing things that aren't there, the stranger replied, his voice deep and measured. I won fair. Take your loss like a man. The entire saloon had gone quiet. Edgar emerged from his office, his face thunderous. No gunplay in my establishment, he barked. Pete, go sleep it off. Stranger, if you're going to cause trouble, you can leave too. The stranger held up his hands in a placating gesture. No trouble from me. I'm just passing through. looking for a hot meal and a place to rest my horse. I'll take my winnings and be out of your way." Pete spat on the floor but backed down, stumbling toward the door with his friends supporting him. The tension drained from the room, and gradually the noise returned. The stranger gathered his coins and bills from the table, then made his way to the bar. He sat down 2 stools away from Helena, nodding to Samuel. "Whiskey, if you have anything that won't strip paint." Samuel poured him a glass from the better bottle. "You handled that well." "Pete's killed men for less." "I've been in worse scrapes," the stranger said, tossing back the whiskey. "Name's Marcus Young. I'm heading to Sacramento, but my horse threw a shoe about a mile back. Figured I'd stop here for the night." "Welcome to Jamestown," Samuel said. "Not much here these days except memories of better times." Marcus nodded, then his eyes drifted to Helena. She knew what she must look like, her blonde hair pinned up, wearing a deep green dress that showed more than she was comfortable with. But instead of the hungry look she was used to seeing from men, his expression held something different. Curiosity, maybe, concern. "You all right, miss?" he asked. "You look like you've had a rough night." Helena forced a smile. "Aren't they all rough in a place like this?" Something flickered in his eyes, understanding perhaps. He turned back to his drink, and Helena felt strangely disappointed. Most men pressed, pushed, tried to buy her time and attention. This one seemed content to leave her be. "Another round?" Samuel asked Marcus. "Why not?" "It's been a long ride." Edgar appeared behind the bar, his presence like a dark cloud. "Helena, there's a gentleman upstairs waiting for you. Room 3. The words hit her like a physical blow. She had hoped to avoid that tonight, to just serve drinks and nothing more. But Edgar's expression brooked no argument. She was his property, and he would use her as he saw fit. "I need a moment," she said softly. "Now, Helena." She stood, her legs shaky, and started toward the stairs, her vision blurred with unshed tears. This was her life, night after night, year after year. 5 more years of this. She would not survive it. Something in her would break long before 1883 arrived. How much? The words stopped her in her tracks. She turned to see Marcus looking at Edgar, his expression neutral but his eyes hard. "Excuse me," Edgar said. "How much for her time tonight?" Marcus clarified. "I'd like to engage her services instead." Edgar's eyes narrowed. "She's already spoken for. I'll pay double whatever he's paying." The room had gone quiet again. Helena stared at the stranger, this Marcus Young, trying to understand what was happening. Edgar looked between them, calculation in his gaze. "Triple," Edgar said. "Done." Marcus pulled bills from his pocket, counting them out on the bar. "Whatever room you have available." Edgar snatched up the money, his greedy fingers quick. "Room 7. 1 hour." Marcus stood, draining his whiskey glass, then looked at Helena. "After you, miss." Helena's mind spun as she climbed the stairs, Marcus following at a respectful distance. Room 7 was at the end of the hall, one of the better rooms with actual wallpaper and a quilt on the bed. She opened the door with shaking hands, stepping inside. Marcus entered behind her and closed the door. Then he did something that shocked her to her core. He walked past the bed, pulled out the single chair in the room, and sat down facing away from her. "You can relax," he said quietly. "I'm not going to touch you." Helena stood frozen. "I don't understand." "I saw your face when that man told you to go upstairs. You looked like you were walking to your own execution." He kept his gaze fixed on the wall. "Nobody should have to feel like that. So we'll sit here for an hour, and then you can go back down and tell him whatever you want about what happened." Tears spilled down Helena's cheeks before she could stop them. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her whole body trembling with relief and confusion, and something she couldn't quite name. "Why would you do this?" "My mother was in a place like this once," Marcus said, his voice rough. before my father found her and married her. She told me stories about what it was like, about the men who were cruel and the ones who were kind. I figured the world could use more of the latter." Helena wiped her eyes. "Your father married her." "He did. Loved her until the day he died 5 years back. She passed 2 years after him. They had 30 good years together." He paused. "Everyone deserves a chance at freedom and happiness. Even women's society has decided don't matter." They sat in silence for a moment. Helena studied his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the tired set of his shoulders. "Where are you coming from?" "Montana. I've been working ranches up there, but I got word my uncle died and left me some land near Sacramento. Figured it was time to settle down, build something of my own." "That sounds nice," Helena said wistfully. "Having something that's yours." "You don't have that here." The question opened a floodgate. Before she knew it, Helena was telling him everything. About her father's death, the debt, Edgar's contract, the 3 years she had already served, and the 5 more he was demanding. About feeling trapped and hopeless and so tired she could barely remember what it felt like to want to wake up in the morning. Marcus listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he turned to face her, and the intensity in his gray eyes made her breath catch. $2,000, he said. "That's what he wants to let you go." "Yes, but it's impossible. I could never raise that much money." "What if someone else could?" Helena's heart stuttered. "What are you saying?" Marcus leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I'm saying I came through Jamestown tonight with nearly $3,000 in my saddlebag, money I saved from years of hard work. I was going to use it to stock my new ranch, buy cattle and equipment. But I'm looking at you, and I'm thinking about my mother, and I'm thinking that some things matter more than cattle." "No," Helena said immediately, even as hope blazed bright in her chest. "I couldn't let you do that. You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you didn't choose this life. I know you're trapped in it. And I know that if I ride out of here tomorrow morning without at least trying to help you, I'll regret it for the rest of my days." Helena stood, pacing the small room. "But why? What would you get out of it? I couldn't pay you back, not for years, maybe not ever. I'm not asking you to pay me back." Marcus stood too, and suddenly the room felt very small. "I'm asking if you want to be free of this place tonight, if you want a chance at a different life. With you. If you're willing. I'm not expecting anything, Helena. I'm not buying you from him to own you myself. I'm offering you a partnership if you want it. Someone to watch your back while you figure out what you want to do next. And if that means going separate ways once we reach Sacramento, then so be it." It was insane. Completely insane. This man was a stranger, and he was offering to spend his life savings to free her from a contract with nothing guaranteed in return. Helena looked into his eyes and saw sincerity there and something else, a loneliness that matched her own. "What if Edgar says no?" she asked. "What if he won't take the money?" "Men like him always take money," Marcus said. "It's the only thing they love more than power." Helena's hands were shaking again, but this time from possibility rather than fear. "If you do this, if you really do this, I'll find a way to make it up to you, I swear it. You don't owe me anything except honesty. Can you give me that?" "Yes." "Then that's all I need." Marcus moved toward the door. "Stay here, I'll go talk to him now." "Wait," Helena said. He turned back and she crossed the distance between them, taking his hand. His fingers were calloused and warm. "Thank you. Whatever happens, thank you for seeing me as a person and not just something to use." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "You're more than this place ever told you that you were. Don't forget that." Then he was gone, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. Helena sat back down on the bed, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She pressed her hands together and prayed to a God she wasn't sure listened to women like her anymore. The minutes crawled by. She heard raised voices from downstairs, but couldn't make out words. The piano had stopped playing. She imagined Edgar refusing, throwing Marcus out, adding more years to her contract as punishment for trying to escape. Then footsteps on the stairs again, faster this time. The door opened, and Marcus stood there with a piece of paper in his hand and a grim smile on his face. "Pack your things," he said. "We're leaving." Helena's hands flew to her mouth. He agreed. He tried to haggle, but I told him it was $2,000 for your contract or nothing. He took it. "Sign this paper saying you're released from all obligations to him and the Red Queen Saloon, effective immediately." He held up the document. "You're free, Helena." The word seemed impossible. Free. After 3 years of captivity, after resigning herself to 5 more, she was simply free. Helena launched herself at Marcus, throwing her arms around him. He caught her, steadying them both, and she felt him hesitate before carefully hugging her back. "Thank you," she sobbed into his shoulder. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you out of here before he changes his mind or tries to cause trouble." Helena had few possessions. A battered trunk with 2 plain dresses, a brush, and a few personal items that had belonged to her mother. Marcus carried it down the stairs while Helena followed, her head held high. The saloon patrons watched in silence. Samuel gave her a nod and a genuine smile. The other girls stared with a mixture of envy and hope. Edgar stood by the bar, the money already disappeared into his pockets. His expression was dark, but he said nothing. The contract was signed, the deal done. Marcus led Helena out into the cool October night. The stars overhead were brilliant, and the air tasted sweeter than she remembered. His horse, a sturdy bay gelding, was tied up outside. "The livery is just down the street," Marcus said. "I need to get him shoed properly before we can leave town. There's a boarding house next door. Let's get you a room for the night and we'll head out at first light." "A room of my own?" Helena asked, the concept feeling foreign. "Of course. Like I said, I'm not expecting anything from you." They walked through the quiet streets of Jamestown. Most of the town was asleep, though light and noise still spilled from a few saloons. The boarding house was a modest building run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson, who asked no questions when Marcus paid for 2 separate rooms. Helena's room was small but clean, with a real bed and curtains on the window. She set her trunk down and turned to find Marcus lingering in the doorway. "Try to get some sleep," he said. "It's a long ride to Sacramento." "Marcus," she said, and he paused. "I meant what I said upstairs. I'll find a way to make this up to you. And I meant what I said too. You don't owe me anything." But his smile was warm. "Sleep well, Helena." He closed the door, and Helena was alone in a room of her own for the first time in 3 years. She sat on the bed, then lay back, staring at the ceiling. Tears came again, but these were different. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of cautious joy. She thought about Marcus, this stranger who had appeared like something out of a dream. His mother had been in a brothel once, and his father had loved her anyway. Was that what Marcus was offering her? Love? Or just kindness? Helena wasn't sure she knew the difference anymore. She fell asleep in her dress, too exhausted to change, and dreamed of open roads and endless sky. Morning came with golden light through the window. Helena woke disoriented, then remembered everything in a rush. She changed into one of her plain dresses, a simple blue cotton that had been her mother's once. She brushed her hair and pinned it up, studying her reflection in the small mirror over the wash basin. She looked different somehow, lighter. A knock on the door made her jump. "Helena, it's Marcus. I've got breakfast if you're hungry." She opened the door to find him holding 2 cloth-wrapped parcels. "Mrs. Patterson made biscuits and bacon. Figured you might want to eat before we ride out." They ate sitting on the front porch of the boarding house, watching Jamestown wake up. Marcus told her about Montana, about the ranch where he had worked for the past 8 years. He had started as a teenager, learning from the ground up, saving every penny he could. "My pa taught me the value of honest work," he said. "He was a carpenter, built half the houses in our town. He always said a man should have something to show for his years, something solid that would outlast him." "What was your mother like?" Helena asked. Marcus smiled, and it transformed his face. "Fierce, kind. She never let anyone make her feel small, even though plenty tried. She taught me to read and write, made sure I had schooling even when money was tight. She believed people could change, could be more than their circumstances." He glanced at Helena. "I think she would have liked you." Helena felt warmth spread through her chest. "I wish I could have met her." They finished eating and gathered their belongings. Marcus's horse was freshly shoed and ready to travel. He helped Helena secure her trunk to the saddle, then paused. "You know how to ride?" he asked. "Not well," Helena admitted. "My father didn't have money for horses." "We'll go slow then. You'll ride with me for now, and once we're settled, I'll teach you properly." He swung into the saddle, then reached down. "Take my hand." Helena gripped his hand, and he pulled her up behind him with surprising ease. She settled onto the horse's back, her arms wrapping around Marcus's waist. She felt the solid warmth of him through his shirt, the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "Hold on," Marcus said, and urged the horse forward. They rode out of Jamestown as the sun climbed higher, leaving behind the Red Queen Saloon and the life Helena had thought would define her forever. She looked back once, at the buildings growing smaller in the distance, and felt no regret. Only relief. The road to Sacramento was long and dusty, winding through the California foothills. Marcus kept a steady pace, stopping frequently to let the horse rest and to check that Helena was comfortable. They talked as they rode, easy conversation that flowed naturally. Helena learned that Marcus was 25 years old, that his favorite color was the deep blue of twilight, that he could play harmonica but couldn't carry a tune singing. He learned that Helena loved books but had rarely gotten to read them, that she made excellent apple pie when she had the ingredients, that she dreamed of seeing the ocean someday. "Sacramento's not far from San Francisco," Marcus said. "Once we're settled, we could take a trip there. You could see the Pacific." "You don't have to keep making promises," Helena said softly. "You've already done more than enough." "I'm not making promises out of obligation," Marcus replied. "I'm making them because I want to." They stopped for the night at a small creek, making camp under a sprawling oak tree. Marcus showed Helena how to set up the bedrolls and start a fire. He cooked beans and bacon in a small pan, and they ate watching the stars emerge. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if things had been different?" Helena asked. "If your father hadn't married your mother, if you'd grown up in some other way?" Marcus poked at the fire with a stick. "Sometimes. But I figure we're the sum of everything that happened to us, good and bad. If things had been different, I wouldn't be who I am now, and I wouldn't be here with you." Helena hugged her knees to her chest. "I spent so long being angry at my father for what he did, for the debt he left me. But tonight, sitting here, I wonder if maybe it all happened the way it was supposed to. If maybe I needed to go through that darkness to appreciate this light." "That's a generous way of looking at it," Marcus said. "Or maybe I'm just too tired to be angry anymore." They fell silent, comfortable in each other's presence. Eventually Marcus banked the fire and they lay down in their separate bedrolls, the night sounds of crickets and rustling leaves filling the air. "Marcus," Helena said into the darkness. "Yeah, I'm scared. What if I don't know how to be free? What if I'm too broken for a normal life?" She heard him shift, and then his hand found hers in the space between their bedrolls. He squeezed gently. "You're not broken," he said firmly. You're bent maybe like we all are. But bent things can be straightened, given time and care, and you won't be alone. I'll be right here for as long as you want me to be. Helena held onto his hand like a lifeline. I want you to be here for a very long time. Then that's what you'll get. She fell asleep still holding his hand, and she didn't have nightmares for the first time in 3 years. They reached Sacramento 2 days later, riding into the bustling city on a warm afternoon. The streets were crowded with wagons and people, the air filled with the sounds of commerce and construction. Sacramento had grown significantly since the gold rush, becoming a proper city with brick buildings and paved streets in the downtown area. Marcus guided them to a lawyer's office on J Street, where he needed to finalize the inheritance of his uncle's land. The lawyer, a precise man named Mr. Whitmore, greeted them cordially. "Mr. Young, excellent to finally meet you. Your uncle spoke highly of you in his letters." Mr. Whitmore's eyes drifted to Helena with curiosity but no judgment. "And this is my fiancée, Helena Monroe," Marcus said without hesitation. Helena's eyes widened, but she forced herself to remain calm. After Mr. Whitmore turned to retrieve papers from his desk, she hissed, "Fiancé." "It'll make things simpler," Marcus murmured back. "People ask fewer questions of married couples. If you're not comfortable with it, I'll tell him the truth." Helena considered. A woman traveling alone with a man she wasn't married to would face speculation and gossip, possibly worse. The lie was a protection, and after everything Marcus had done for her, she trusted his judgment. "It's fine," she whispered back. Mr. Whitmore returned with a sheaf of documents. "Your uncle's property consists of 80 acres about 10 miles northeast of the city. There's a house on the land, though I'm told it needs some work. The property also includes a barn and a functioning well." He spread a map on the desk. "Here's the location. The deed is clear, no liens or debts attached. Sign here and it's all yours." Marcus signed the papers, his expression carefully neutral, but Helena could sense his excitement. When they left the office, deed in hand, he let out a breath. 80 acres, he said, wonder in his voice. "That's enough to build a real ranch." "Enough for cattle, horses, maybe crops if the soil's good." "Can we go see it?" Helena asked, caught up in his enthusiasm. "Absolutely." They bought supplies first: food, tools, seed for planting, fabric for curtains and linens. Marcus seemed to have planned carefully, his remaining money stretching to cover what they needed. Helena helped him choose items, feeling strange and wonderful to be making decisions about a home. "What kind of curtains do you like?" Marcus asked, standing in the dry goods store surrounded by bolts of fabric. "I get to choose?" Helena asked, touching a pretty floral print. "It'll be your house too, you should have a say." Helena selected the floral fabric, then some sturdy muslin for everyday use. She picked out dishes and cooking pans, needles and thread, candles and lamp oil. Marcus watched her with a small smile, paying for everything without complaint. As they loaded their purchases onto a wagon Marcus had bought for hauling, Helena felt tears prick her eyes again. "This doesn't feel real," she said. "A week ago I was trapped in that saloon, and now I'm buying dishes for a house I've never seen." "It's real," Marcus assured her, "and it's just the beginning." They set out for the property as afternoon stretched into evening. The road was rough but passable, cutting through rolling grassland dotted with oaks. When they finally reached the property boundary, marked by a weathered fence post, the sun was beginning to set. The house sat on a gentle rise, a modest structure of wood and stone with a covered porch. It was small, maybe 3 rooms total, and definitely needed work. Several shingles were missing from the roof, and one window was broken. But the bones were solid and the setting was beautiful. Helena climbed down from the wagon and walked toward the house slowly. Behind it, the barn stood sturdy against the darkening sky. Fields stretched out in all directions, and in the distance, she could see the glimmer of a creek. "What do you think?" Marcus asked, coming to stand beside her. "I think it's perfect," Helena said honestly. "I think it's the most beautiful place I've ever seen." Marcus grinned, boyish and happy. "Then let's go see what we're working with." The inside of the house was dusty but surprisingly intact. The main room had a fireplace and open space for a kitchen and living area. A door led to a bedroom, and another to a small storage room that could be converted into a second bedroom. The furniture was sparse and worn, but usable. "We'll need to patch the roof before the winter rains come," Marcus said, inspecting the ceiling. "And fix that window. But the structure is sound. My uncle built well." They unloaded their supplies by lamplight, stacking everything inside. Marcus started a fire in the fireplace, and the room immediately felt more welcoming. Helena found the coffee pot they had bought and set about making coffee, using water from the pump outside. "There's only one bed," Marcus said, returning from the bedroom. "I'll sleep out here on the floor. You take the bedroom." "Marcus, don't be ridiculous. That floor is hard as stone." "We can share the bed. We're adults and I trust you." Helena surprised herself with her boldness, but it felt right. After all they had been through, sleeping in the same room didn't seem scandalous. It seemed natural. Marcus looked uncertain. "Helena, I don't want you to feel pressured." "I don't feel pressured. I feel safe with you. That's something I haven't felt in a very long time." She met his eyes. "Please, I don't want to sleep alone tonight," he nodded slowly. "All right, but if you change your mind at any point, just say so." They drank their coffee sitting on the porch, watching the stars emerge in full glory. The night was cool and clear, the air scented with grass and earth. Helena felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. "I keep expecting to wake up and find this is all a dream," she said. "That I'm still in that room at the Red Queen and none of this really happened." "It's not a dream," Marcus said. "And even if it were, we'd be dreaming it together." Later, they lay in the narrow bed side by side, a careful distance between them. Helena stared at the ceiling, hyper-aware of Marcus's presence, his warmth, his steady breathing. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. "Anything." "Why did you tell Mr. Whitmore I was your fiancé? You could have said I was your sister or cousin or just a friend." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Because when he asked, that's what came out, and it didn't feel like a lie, not completely. It felt like maybe something that could be true if you wanted it to be. Helena's heart hammered against her ribs. "Are you saying you want to marry me?" "I'm saying I want the chance to see if we could build something together. I'm not going to rush you, Helena. You've been through hell, and you need time to figure out who you are outside of that place. But I also won't pretend I don't feel something when I look at you. Something that feels an awful lot like the beginning of love." Helena rolled onto her side to face him. In the moonlight coming through the window, she could see his profile, strong and honest. "I feel it too," she whispered, "and it terrifies me." Marcus turned his head to meet her gaze. "Why?" "Because what if I don't know how to love someone properly? What if all I know how to do is survive? Then we'll figure it out together. There's no rulebook, Helena. We just take it one day at a time." Helena reached out tentatively and found his hand. He laced his fingers through hers, and they lay there holding hands in the darkness like teenagers discovering something new and fragile and precious. "One day at a time," Helena echoed. "I think I can do that." They fell asleep still holding hands, and when Helena woke in the morning with golden light streaming through the window and Marcus's arm draped protectively over her waist, she realized she was smiling. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Marcus worked on repairing the house and outbuildings while Helena cleaned and organized their new home. She scrubbed floors, washed windows, and hung the curtains she had chosen. She planted herbs in a small garden near the kitchen door and learned how to cook on the temperamental fireplace. Marcus proved to be patient and kind, always asking her opinion, always making sure she was comfortable. They worked side by side on projects, and Helena found herself laughing more than she had in years. Marcus had a dry sense of humor and a knack for finding the absurd in everyday situations. One afternoon, while Marcus was on the roof patching shingles, Helena decided to surprise him by baking bread. She had watched the cook at the Red Queen often enough, and she had helped her own mother bake when she was young. How hard could it be? Very hard, as it turned out. The bread came out of the oven looking more like a brick than anything edible. Helena stared at it in dismay, then started laughing. She laughed so hard she had to sit down, tears streaming down her face. Marcus came running in, alarmed. "What happened? Are you hurt?" Helena held up the bread brick, unable to speak through her laughter. Marcus took one look at it and started laughing, two deep belly laughs that shook his whole frame. He sat down next to her on the floor, and they laughed until they were both breathless. "I think," Marcus gasped, "we can use that to patch the barn wall." "Or as a weapon if bandits come," Helena added, which set them off again. When they finally calmed down, Marcus looked at her with such warmth in his eyes that Helena felt her breath catch. "I love hearing you laugh," he said. "I don't think I've heard anything more beautiful." Helena felt heat rise in her cheeks. "It feels good to laugh again. I'd almost forgotten how. Then we'll have to make sure you do it often." He stood and offered his hand. Helena took it, letting him pull her up. But instead of letting go, Marcus held her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "Helena," he said softly, "can I kiss you?" Her heart stuttered. She had been kissed before by men who paid Edgar for the privilege, by men who took without asking. Those kisses had been invasions, violations. The thought of kissing Marcus felt entirely different. It felt like a choice. "Yes," she whispered. Marcus cupped her face gently with his free hand, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Then he leaned in and kissed her, soft and sweet and asking nothing more than she was willing to give. Helena's eyes fluttered closed, and she felt something inside her chest crack open, letting in light. The kiss was brief, tender, and when Marcus pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that for days," he admitted. "Why didn't you?" Helena asked. "Because I was waiting for the right moment, and I wanted to make sure you wanted it too." Helena rose on her toes and kissed him again, less tentatively this time. Marcus made a soft sound of surprise and pleasure, his arms coming around her waist to hold her close. The kiss deepened, becoming something warmer, more urgent, and Helena felt desire unfurl in her belly. Not the hollow mechanical response she had learned to fake at the Red Queen, but real want, real need. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus's eyes were dark with emotion. "We should probably slow down," he said, though he sounded reluctant. "Why?" Helena asked. "We're engaged, remember." She said it teasingly, but there was a question underneath. Marcus studied her face. "Is that what you want, to really be engaged?" Helena considered carefully. 2 weeks ago she had been a prisoner. Now she was standing in a house that felt like home, in the arms of a man who treated her like she mattered. It was fast, maybe too fast, but nothing about their situation was conventional. "I want to be with you," she said slowly. "I want to build this life we're starting. If that means being engaged, being married eventually, then yes, I want that, but only if you do too." "Helena Monroe," Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion, "I would be honored to be your husband when you're ready. No rush." "Soon," Helena said, surprising herself. "Let's make it soon. I don't want to wait anymore. I've spent 3 years in limbo waiting for my life to start. I want to start it now with you." Marcus kissed her again, deep and thorough, and Helena felt the last of her walls crumble. She was falling in love with this man, this stranger who had saved her. Maybe she had been falling since that first night in the saloon when he saw her as a person worth rescuing. They were married 3 weeks later in a small church in Sacramento. Helena wore a simple white dress that Marcus bought for her, and she carried wildflowers Marcus had picked that morning. The ceremony was brief, attended only by Mr. Whitmore and his wife as witnesses. When the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride," Marcus did so with a gentleness that made Helena's eyes sting with happy tears. They celebrated with dinner at a restaurant, laughing and talking until late evening. Then they rode back to their ranch, their home, under a sky full of stars. The wedding night was tentative at first. Helena had experience, but not the right kind. Marcus had been with women before, but never with his wife, never with someone he loved. They fumbled and learned together, patient with each other's nervousness. And when they finally came together, it was with tenderness and care, with whispered words and soft touches, with laughter when things went awkwardly and sighs when they went right. Afterward, Helena lay in Marcus's arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For showing me what this should be like, for being gentle, for loving me." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "You never have to thank me for loving you. It's the easiest thing I've ever done." Helena tilted her face up to kiss him. "I love you too. I wasn't sure I knew how anymore, but I do. I love you, Marcus Young." They made love again, slower this time, learning what made each other gasp and moan. And when they finally fell asleep tangled together, Helena dreamed of the future instead of the past. The autumn turned to winter, and the ranch began to take shape. Marcus bought 6 head of cattle and 2 more horses. He repaired fences and cleared fields. Helena finished making the house a home, sewing curtains and quilts, preserving food for the winter, learning to be a rancher's wife. They fell into an easy partnership. Marcus valued Helena's opinions, asking her advice on everything from which fields to plant to what color to paint the barn. Helena flourished under his respect, becoming more confident, more herself. She smiled easily now, laughed often, and the shadows that had haunted her eyes began to fade. One cold December evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Helena realized she had gone a full day without thinking about the Red Queen Saloon. The realization made her pause, then smile. She was free, truly free in every way that mattered. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, looking up from the harness he was mending. "How happy I am," Helena said simply. "How lucky I am that you walked into that saloon that night." "I was the lucky one," Marcus countered. "I was heading to Sacramento to start a lonely life on this ranch by myself. Instead, I found you." Helena moved from her chair to sit on the floor beside Marcus's chair, leaning against his leg. He set aside the harness and stroked her hair absently, the gesture so natural and affectionate that Helena felt her heart swell. "You ever regret spending your savings on me instead of cattle and equipment?" she asked. "Never. Not once." Marcus's voice was firm. "You're worth more than any amount of cattle or land. You're worth everything." Helena twisted to look up at him. "I want to give you children someday. I want to fill this house with laughter and love. I want to build a legacy with you." Marcus slid down to the floor beside her, pulling her into his lap. "Someday soon, I hope, but only when you're ready. There's no rush for anything, Helena. We have our whole lives ahead of us." "I'm ready," Helena said, and she meant it. "I'm ready for all of it. The future doesn't scare me anymore, not when I'm facing it with you." They made love in front of the fire that night, slow and sweet, and Helena felt complete in a way she never had before. She was no longer Helena Monroe, the brothel girl with a debt she could never repay. She was Helena Young, rancher's wife, and she was building something beautiful. Spring came with wildflowers and new calves. Marcus taught Helena to ride properly, and she spent her days exploring their land, learning every hill and stream. She started keeping chickens and expanded her garden. Marcus bought more cattle and the ranch began to prosper. In late April, Helena realized her monthly bleeding was late. She waited another week to be sure, then told Marcus over breakfast. "I think I'm pregnant," she said, setting down her fork. Marcus froze, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. "Pregnant? You're sure?" "Pretty sure. I'm 6 weeks late and I've been sick every morning." Marcus set down his cup carefully, then came around the table to kneel beside Helena's chair. He took her hands in his eyes bright with emotion. "Are you happy about it?" "I'm terrified," Helena admitted. "But yes, I'm happy. Are you?" "Helena, I'm more than happy. I'm overjoyed." He pressed a kiss to her palm. "We're going to be parents." Tears spilled down Helena's cheeks, happy tears this time. "We are, oh God, Marcus, we really are." They held each other in the morning sunlight, dreaming of the future. A baby, their baby, created from love and hope and second chances. The pregnancy was difficult at times. Helena was sick frequently in the early months, and as summer approached, the heat made her uncomfortable. But Marcus was attentive and patient, taking on extra chores without complaint, making sure Helena rested. He read to her in the evenings from books he borrowed from town, his hand resting on her growing belly. "What should we name the baby?" Helena asked one evening in July as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "I liked my father's name," Marcus said. "Martin. And my mother's was Catherine." "Martin Young," Helena tested. "Catherine Young, both sound wonderful, though we should probably have more options just in case." They spent hours discussing names, building a list. Helena suggested names from books she had loved. Marcus suggested names from his family. They debated and laughed and made plans. "What kind of parents do you think we'll be?" Helena asked. "I think we'll be the kind who love our children fiercely and teach them to be good people," Marcus said. "I think we'll make mistakes, but we'll learn from them. And I think our kids will know they're wanted and cherished every day of their lives." Helena rested her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move. "This child is so lucky to have you as a father, and lucky to have you as a mother. You're going to be amazing, Helena." The baby came on a cold October night, exactly 1 year after Marcus had walked into the Red Queen saloon. Helena's labor was long and difficult, attended by a midwife from town and by Marcus, who refused to leave her side. He held her hand and wiped her forehead and whispered encouragement through every contraction. When the baby finally arrived, crying lustily in the midwife's hands, Helena collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted and elated. "It's a boy," the midwife announced, cleaning him off. "A healthy, strong boy." She placed the baby in Helena's arms, and Helena stared down at her son in wonder. He had dark hair like Marcus and gray eyes that would probably lighten with age. "He was perfect, Martin," Helena whispered. "Hello, Martin." Marcus leaned over them both, tears streaming openly down his face. "He's beautiful. You're both beautiful." He kissed Helena's forehead. "Thank you for this gift." "Thank you for giving me a life worth living," Helena replied. "Thank you for saving me." "We saved each other," Marcus said, and it was true. The years passed like pages in a beloved book, each one treasured. Martin grew into a curious, energetic toddler who followed Marcus everywhere, wanting to help with ranch chores. 2 years after Martin came Rose, a daughter with Helena's blonde hair and a smile that lit up the whole house. Then another son, James, quiet and thoughtful. The ranch prospered. Marcus proved to be an excellent cattleman, and Helena's frugal management and hard work helped them expand steadily. They built a larger house, hired ranch hands during busy seasons, and became respected members of the community. Helena never forgot where she had come from. She donated money to charities that helped women in difficult situations. When she heard about girls trapped in contracts like the one she had been in, she did what she could to help, often working with Marcus to find solutions. They couldn't save everyone, but they saved some, and that mattered. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Marcus surprised Helena with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children with a trusted neighbor and took the train to the coast. Helena saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time, standing on a cliff overlooking the endless blue water, and she cried with joy. "You promised me this," she said to Marcus as they stood together watching the waves. "That first day on the road to Sacramento, you said we could see the ocean." "I always keep my promises," Marcus replied, wrapping his arms around her from behind, "especially promises to you." They spent 3 days in San Francisco, exploring the city, eating in restaurants and staying in a hotel room that felt impossibly luxurious. But the best part was simply being together, reconnecting away from the daily demands of ranch life. "Do you ever think about how different our lives could have been?" Helena asked one evening as they walked along the waterfront. "If you hadn't stopped in Jamestown that night," sometimes, Marcus admitted, "but not with regret. I think we were meant to find each other, Helena." "I think everything in both our lives led us to that moment in the Red Queen." "I used to hate my father for what he did to me," Helena said, "but I've forgiven him. If he hadn't made those choices, I never would have met you, and I wouldn't trade what we have for anything." Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, and the sound of the ocean filled the air. "I love you, Helena Young, more today than yesterday and less than tomorrow. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Helena kissed him there on the waterfront, not caring who saw. "I love you too, always." They returned home to squealing children and a ranch that needed attention. Life resumed its comfortable rhythm. The children grew older, started school, made friends. Martin showed a talent for working with horses. Rose loved to read and draw. And James was fascinated by how things worked, always taking apart and rebuilding whatever he could get his hands on. When Martin turned 16 in 1895, Helena realized that he was now older than she had been when Edgar had claimed her. The thought made her hold her son a little tighter, grateful beyond words that he had grown up in freedom and love. "You're squishing me, Ma," Martin protested good-naturedly. "Let me squish you," Helena replied. "You're my firstborn, I'm allowed." Marcus watched them with amusement from across the room. At 42 years old, he had threads of silver in his dark hair, but he was still strong and vital. He caught Helena's eye and winked, and she felt the same flutter in her stomach she had felt the first time they kissed. Some things never changed. When Rose turned 13, Helena sat her down for a serious conversation. She told her daughter, in age-appropriate terms, about the importance of making her own choices, about the value of independence, about never letting anyone make her feel less than she was. Rose listened seriously, her gray eyes so like her father's. "Is this because of what happened to you?" Rose asked. Before you met Pa, Helena had told her children the broad strokes of her story, wanting them to understand that people could overcome difficult circumstances. "Partly. I want you to know that you have choices, Rose. That you never have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable, no matter who asks or what they offer. Your life is yours." "I know, Ma," Rose said, hugging her mother. "You and Pa taught us that. We're lucky to have you." Helena held her daughter close, breathing in the scent of sunshine and soap. "I'm the lucky one, sweet girl. You'll never know how lucky." More years passed. The children grew into adults. Martin married a rancher's daughter and took over much of the day-to-day operation of the ranch. Rose went to college in Sacramento, one of the few women in her class, determined to become a teacher. James apprenticed with a mechanic in town, fascinated by the new automobiles that were beginning to appear. Helena and Marcus, their children mostly grown, found themselves with time together they hadn't had in years. They took walks in the evening, talking about everything and nothing. They made love like newlyweds, their passion undiminished by time. They planned for the future, talking about maybe traveling more, seeing the world beyond California. On a warm spring evening in 1903, 25 years after they met, Helena and Marcus sat on the porch of their ranch house watching the sunset. Martin and his wife lived in a house they had built on the property. Rose was home visiting from her teaching position in Sacramento. James was in town but would be home for dinner tomorrow. "We did well," Helena said softly. "Look at what we built." Marcus took her hand, his thumb tracing familiar patterns on her skin. "We built it together. None of this would exist without you." "It wouldn't exist without you either," Helena countered. "You gave me my life back, Marcus. Everything good I have, everything I am, started the night you walked into that saloon." "I think you would have found your way out eventually," Marcus said. "You're too strong, too stubborn to have stayed trapped forever." Helena leaned her head on his shoulder. "Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to do it alone. I'm glad I got to do it with you." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank lower, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Somewhere in the fields, cattle lowed. In the barn, horses nickered. Inside the house, Rose was cooking dinner, and the smell of roasting chicken drifted out through the open windows. "You remember what you said to me that first night?" Helena asked. "In the hotel room in Jamestown." "I said a lot of things that night." "You said everyone deserves a chance at freedom and happiness. Even women society has decided don't matter." "I remember. You gave me that chance, and I've spent every day since trying to be worthy of it." Marcus turned to look at her, his expression serious. "Helena, you were always worthy. You were worthy the day I met you, and you're worthy now. That's not something you have to earn. It's something you simply are." Helena felt tears prick her eyes, even after all these years. "How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky," Marcus said, pulling her close. "We found each other in a world that's often cruel. We built something beautiful out of pain. That's not luck, Helena. That's love." She kissed him as the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky. 25 years of kisses, and each one still felt like the first. 25 years of love, and it still grew stronger every day. Rose called them in for dinner, and they went inside to gather with their family. Around the table they said grace, thanking God for their blessings. Helena looked at the faces of the people she loved, her husband, her children, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Later that night in their bedroom, Marcus held Helena close. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, always able to tell when her mind was busy. "I'm thinking about that girl in the Red Queen saloon," Helena said. "The one who thought she would never escape, who thought she would die there. I wish I could go back and tell her that everything would be all right, that the best parts of her life were still ahead of her." "You survived to become the woman you are now," Marcus said. "That girl did escape, Helena. She's right here, strong and whole and surrounded by love." Helena rolled over to face him, her hand cupping his cheek. The moonlight through the window cast shadows across his face, highlighting the lines that time had etched there. She loved every single one of them. 25 years, she said. "We've been together longer than I ever imagined possible." "And we'll have 25 more," Marcus promised. "And 25 after that if we're lucky." "I love you," Helena whispered. "I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "I love you too," Marcus replied. "My Helena, my wife, my everything." They made love slowly, tenderly. a reaffirmation of vows spoken long ago and kept faithfully ever since. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Helena felt complete peace. Her life had taken a dark turn once, but it had led her here, to this man, to this family, to this beautiful existence. She had been bought out of a contract that night in Jamestown, freed from a debt that wasn't truly hers to pay. But what Marcus had really given her was so much more than freedom. He had given her love, partnership, respect, and the chance to become who she was meant to be. Helena Young fell asleep in her husband's arms, the woman who had once been Helena Monroe, the brothel girl with no hope and no future. She had been saved, yes, but more importantly, she had been loved. And in the end, that made all the difference. The ranch prospered for many more years. Helena and Marcus lived to see their grandchildren born and grow. They celebrated 50 years of marriage surrounded by 3 generations of family, all of them testament to the love that had started in a smoky saloon one October night in 1878. When Marcus passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, Helena grieved deeply, but without regret. They had been given 53 years together, years filled with love and laughter and the everyday joys of a life well lived. She held his hand as he took his last breath, and she whispered, "Thank you for everything, for all of it. I'll see you again soon, my love." Helena lived another 3 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, still sharp-minded and full of stories. She told them about their grandfather, about how he had been brave enough to bet on a broken woman and wise enough to see past her circumstances to the person beneath. She told them about second chances, and about how love could heal even the deepest wounds. On a warm summer evening, sitting on the porch of the ranch house she had called home for more than 50 years, Helena closed her eyes and didn't open them again. Her last thought was of Marcus, of his gray eyes and kind smile, of the way he had looked at her that first night and seen someone worth saving. She had been worth saving. She had always been worth saving. And in the end, she hadn't just been saved. She had lived. She had loved. She had been happy. And that was the greatest gift of all.